Mosquitoes. There's always going to be mosquitoes. Now, there are people who, when I say that, tell me that makes me pro-mosquito and insisting that mosquitoes are just part of the ecosystem and you can't get rid of them all. And then some people say that I'm pro-mosquito for acknowledging that mosquitoes exist rather than pretending that they don't, even though clearly they bite me no matter how much I cover, how much I spray on me. And then some people want to say the mosquitoes are actually good, right? I haven't attained the right spiritual wisdom or the right level of education from the right people to recognize the good that the mosquitoes are doing me. And amid all this, all these camps and more say that I need to talk about mosquitoes more and, issue statements pro or anti-mosquito or etc., when that's not what I come to the lake for. I come to the lake for that, for the mountain, to see the mountain, and I want to talk to you about the mountain. And the mosquitoes are a part of life, but they're not what I focus on. In this video, what I want to talk to you about is metaphorically the same thing. I want to preach to you about why I don't preach to you. I want to sell you on my agenda of not selling you on my agenda. And while there are certainly people this whole thing angers horribly, I can tell you that if it angers you that I don't have an agenda, you probably don't want to listen to this. For the 5 people who are interested in why I studiously insist on not trying to push myself on you, listen on and I'll tell you about why. I've said here and there in videos, one theme and another, that I don't think that anger is very useful. In personal context, anger is often a way that other people get to control you, either by making you angry at other people or making you angry at them. And I have never been fumingly angry at another person, even with pretty good justification, and not regretted what I did while I was fumingly angry. This makes me real suspicious of people who want to get other people fumingly angry, or who want to be seen fumingly angry. So I don't record videos in a white hot heat, and I don't think that you ought to listen to them in a white hot heat. I think that we learn best when we approach a subject with the intent simply to learn about it, right? To be very simplistic, if I'm going to give you a map to this mountain, you're going to find it best if you ignore my political views, my religious views, whatever other ideological views, and just look at the map. Now, if I've got a map, if I know this territory well, then if I'm not, covering my map with pro or anti-mosquito signs, to continue that metaphor and not get into some specific issue, you'll be able to see it pretty clearly, and regardless of our disagreements about completely ancillary, irrelevant subjects, be able to learn something from it. And someone who learns one subject well is well prepared to learn any other subject well. I insist, although it is not fashionable with the left or right, I insist that a separation must be maintained between ideology and fact, just like that separation between church and state that the founders insisted on. I think that it is a huge shame of our divisive times that people want to know if you're team red or team blue before they'll listen to you, when in fact most of life, I insist, does not need to be viewed through that red or blue lens at all, And Team Red and Team Blue, we are not so different, y'all and us. You know, this is we all eat, drink, we all are curious, we all can stand to learn from each other and from just observing the facts of the world. I think that if I start pushing my agenda about some issue, let's say mosquitoes, let's say I'm particularly pro-mosquito for some reason. For one thing, it doesn't really have anything to do with anything that I talk about, right? If I'm telling you about the mountain, yeah, I can warn you that there's mosquitoes there. I can acknowledge the existence of the mosquitoes, but it doesn't really tell you much about the mountain because there's mosquitoes everywhere. And if you're particularly anti-mosquito, you know, maybe you're a good person in spite of your disagreements with me, and you might be a lot less inclined to accept the facts as I've observed them and can present them if you are turned off by my very pro-mosquito view. I think this sort of thing happens real often, and it has to do with the fact that people assume that to agree with them is to be moral, but I don't assume that at all. I think the world contains its share of throat cutters, and I think that they assume whatever flag is convenient to justify their throat cutting, right? Call me simplistic, but when I see someone cutting a throat, I tend to think that person would cut throats regardless of the justification that that person found to do so. I just stay away from the throat cutters, and, you know, if they're pro or anti-mosquito or whatever other issue, I will associate with them for the purposes of getting information out or for sharing some different perspectives, right? I think no matter what issue you choose, you're going to just find the throat cutters there. And of course, we focus on the throat cutters on the other side and ignore the throat cutters on our side. But I can tell you, for all the issues that I truly am passionate about in my personal private life, there are people who agree with me 100% on some of those issues who I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole because they're throat cutters. And there's people who disagree with me who are not. I'm happy to talk to them. I'm happy to share information with them. I'm happy to accept their criticism, right? Now, I think that the throat cutters, and that's a nice shorthand for these people, is they're not always literally physically violent, but maybe, you know, at minimum, real slanderous, libelous type people. Tend to be angry, tend to feel like fate has failed them in some way. Well, I don't think that fate fails anyone. I think that fate, good or bad, tends to be pretty indifferent, like the rain. It falls on good and throat cutter alike. And I don't want to get into a lot of cliches with you, but I can get along with just about anyone who doesn't feel failed by fate, but feels like making some fate and not cutting some throats to do it. Now, when I present on Old Norse language, myth, or whatever related subjects I get into in this channel, or sometimes completely unrelated subjects like dinosaurs, what I'm looking to do is just share that information. You might disagree with me about 99% of all ideological subjects, political, religious, whatever. But I hope that we can both agree that the sky is blue. And if I have some particular information on why the sky is blue, or why there's something surprising about the sky being blue, I hope that you can accept that without assuming that because I disagree with you, I want to cut your throat. Now, it might also be said that I can more effectively talk to you if you do disagree with me about all those subjects if I don't wear all of the subjects that I disagree with you about on my sleeve. And so I try not to do that. Now, plenty of people will argue that any small thing that you do or say or wear indicates your allegiance to some particular team. Usually, if it's not within some narrow range, they insist that you're the exact opposite of them, right? Which is insane, because most of us are not on one extreme or another of anything. Those people will insist that I betray my allegiance to one faction or another by something that I do or say or wear, and of course that faction is going to be the opposite of them. Or very rarely, if they're kind of wishful thinkers, that it's the same as them. But again, I'm not a preacher, and that's not what I want to do. I don't want to attach some ist label to myself and make people shut their ears. And I think that learners ought to do the same thing and remain not only open to any given teacher, right? Aristotle says that it's the mark of the mature mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. Well, you can entertain my version of the facts, and someone else's version of the facts is very different from me. Someone else, even who's very different from either of the first two. And weigh it in your mind without anger, and I might also add, without hope, because we often try to shape things into a narrative that we hope for or fear. And decide that I'm right about mosquitoes, someone else is right about what color the sky is, and someone else is right about, how to pronounce Old Norse. I don't think that there's a whole lot of all or nothing out there where one person is right about every single thing and someone is wrong about every single thing. I think it's a pretty good mix, and I hope that you can accept my mixture for what it is and not feel like cutting my throat for the places where I fail. Surely there's places where I objectively fail, and surely, obviously, there's places where I fail in the opinions of ideologues. If we come at learning with the attitude that there's light in the world, and that putting a lens over that light, while it might let us see a particular facet of it, doesn't help us see the light at all, but actually distorts it. If we come looking for that light, no matter whose light bulb is shining it, I think that we'll all be a little bit better off and restrict our disagreements to the places where they ought to be restricted to. Places like ballot boxes. Now, no one is looking to me for information on how to worship, how to vote, or anything like that. I don't pretend to offer that kind of advice. But I do offer the advice that you watch for the angry ones. Watch for the throat cutters, or the potential throat cutters. They may be on your side. That doesn't make your side wrong. It just means that you're human and that you have opinions that attract throat cutters who want to justify themselves with them. Look to the people who may disagree with you profoundly, whose opinions may even make you angry. If it doesn't make you throat-cuttingly angry, that's okay. The kind of anger that impels you to do something constructive, not just to lash out and hate and slander and anger and violence, that's an okay-ish anger. But don't speak in that anger. Let people reach you with their version of the light if you have time for them. Let yourself entertain their idea. Let yourself entertain my ideas. And take the good where it's at and take the bad where it's at. Right? It's like prospecting. It's like mining. Sometimes you're going to find gold, sometimes you're going to find silver. They're not always going to be together. And sometimes you're going to go a long way before finding a lot of gold, and then sometimes you're going to find a whole lot together. I think people are more or less the same way. That doesn't even mean that the unproductive minds, as it were, are valueless places. They might have a lot of natural beauty. And remember that people often will judge people instantly and then find a reason for why they judge them that way, right? A lot of us have kind of things that we're evaluating people for right away. Does this person look like he or she voted like me? Does this person look like he or she, has a similar orientation to me about X, Y, or Z question? And we judge them for that, and then find our reasons to decide that our first impression was the right one. Look beyond those first impressions for 2 or 3 seconds. I wear a cowboy hat, and so people sometimes assume whatever their stereotypes are that are associated with cowboy hats. In a sense, I kind of don't fight that, because those are stereotypes that apply to people like me to the extent that they wear cowboy hats. And, maybe some of them are true, and maybe if some of them are not true of me, it might make you rethink more important stereotypes that you have. That might be much subtler than that. I just want us all to learn from one another without judging one another and getting angry at one another, right? If someone's making you throat-cuttingly angry, just turn them off. No one's forcing you to watch this video. No one's forcing you to watch anything, as far as I know. I wouldn't want someone to force you. I wouldn't want someone who disagrees with me to feel impelled to watch this, to listen to me ramble about people who ramble, to rant about people who rant, to preach about not preaching. I think one of the finest quotes in all of cinema, and I'm not a superhero movie guy, is Magneto in the X-Men movie from 2000, when he asks if someone is a God-fearing man, and then he says, what a strange phrase. I've always thought of God as a teacher, as a bringer of light, wisdom, and understanding. Well, be open to that light, that wisdom, that understanding. Be open to the teaching of fact. I think a little bit less about the teacher. And if that means you forget about me, that's fine. That's my fate anyway. My fate hasn't failed me that way. That's just a condition of being human. I'm going to keep teaching here till I burn out, which is inevitable. And while I do it, yes, you're going to be able to make all kinds of guesses about who I am, what I want, and all of that. But I swear to you that I'm no throat cutter. I mean no one any harm. And when I get angry at people, I just ignore them and try not to talk about them or to them. I don't go and try to hurt them. And so I pledge to continue to do that here. All right. I'm sure I've forgotten half of what I wanted to say because I didn't write up a script for this. But I hope if nothing else you've enjoyed this lake with the jumping trout. There's a lot of moose around. There's a bear and a cub around somewhere. Haven't seen her for a while. And a lot of these Clark's nutcrackers calling out. And of course, the mosquitoes. But fuck the mosquitoes. And for now, for beautiful Wyoming, wishing you all the best.